the Finance Administration Committee meeting of, what is it? January 21st. So all members are present. Let's start the meeting with additions or corrections to.
You have in front of you the corrections staff.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Page 5, item 2 has been corrected. There was a typo on one of the numbers for the total disbursements, and so you have a corrected report in front of you.
Total disbursements for the month of November.
Let's do that at when we get to the item. We could. This is just adding to the agenda. We'll discuss it.
Right.
Okay. No members of the public present. Not on Zoom. Let's proceed to the action items. So item 1 is the we'll just proceed. Item 1. Too many minutes. Any additions or corrections or to the meeting other than those that were communicated? Simple editorial comments.
So a couple corrections were given to staff just before the meeting started, and those are going to be taken care of.
So with the corrections that have been noted,
That
editorial comments. Editorial comments.
No, they're gonna take the last finance and admin committee meeting that I was the one who called the meeting to order.
Oh.
Because we were actually going to that meeting. And then the adjournment.
All right, this is
Briefly,
Karen Paul.
Right. Yes, noted.
so for those one correction, I move that we.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0. Action item number 2, the treasurer's report for November. And that's the subject matter here that's with the
Yeah.
revised for first page.
All right, I'll provide a summary of the report for the month of November. As noted earlier, there is an update to page 5. The project disbursements, or excuse me, the vendor disbursements were updated to about 2.5 million. That includes the voided checks that's on Exhibit 2A. So let me just go over the summary. So for the month of November, the district started with cash and investments of about 30.1 million. Maybe I should share this report. Sorry.
Disbursement, but what's.
I'll get to it. Yeah, so as you can see on the screen behind you, the district started with total cash and investments of 30.1 million and ended the month with 29.9 million. Not much of a change because the fees received and the cash disbursements were almost equal. Total fee deposits of about 2.4 million were received. These included user fees and payments for the sale of water, as well as a grant payment from the State Water Resources Control Board. The district sent out rebate checks of about 28,000 and also sent out vendor payments, which is all the negatives that you see in column 2 of about 2.5 million. And a detailed listing of those checks is provided in Exhibit 2B. And then Exhibit 2C provides a statement of revenues and expenditures. So far, we're on track in terms of the operating budget. For the capital project side, the actual expenditure depends on the pace of construction activity for the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. and the IRWM grants. So those expenditures are less than expected. And that detail is provided in Exhibit 2C. So that's my summary. I'm open to questions.
So Michelle, let me just. Let's ask a general question. Okay, on the expenditure total that you report. Could I go to 2C? And add on page 15. And just add the current activity. Current period activity. And add those totals and end up with the number that you have on your sheet.
The current period activities for the month of November, and the year-to-date actual is all months up to the month of November.
But the total that's in the November report. That's the one I'm.
All right, so the treasurer report looks at the money received and dispersed, and the revenues and expenditure report looks at the accrued revenues and expenditure. So there would be timing differences between the two. So one looks at the accounting, like the accrual basis, and one looks at the cash basis. So it shouldn't exactly match.
But the number in the report is the accrual and current expenditure. I mean, it's a combination of both activities.
Yes, Exhibit 2C is the accrual-based report. It looks at the post date of the invoices, and the treasurer's report looks at the actual money coming in. So to give you an example, let's say in the month of November, we might have received payments that belong to October or the month before. And so if something was posted in November, but was paid in December, then one report shows the accrual basis, like what's the posted date, and the treasury report looks at when the cash came in or cash left.
So disbursements are actual cash basis, so that $2+ million number staff report is just what physically went out in terms of disbursements, but when those disbursements go out, if one is for an expenditure that actually happened in October, then on an accrual basis, the payment would be reflected against October. But on a disbursement basis, it was when it went out the door.
So what's included in this 2.594 number in
On the staff
the staff
report.
note?
Yes, so that comes from the treasurer's report. If we, let's see, if you add here on the screen, add all the negatives, which is money going out, and the 1,606,000, which are the voided checks. So there's payroll, there's vendor payments, and then there's voided checks. That is the 2.5 million. So vendor payments were 2,087,000, payroll and benefits were like 204,000, payroll checks and direct deposits were 265, and then there were some rebate payments, bank drafts, and bank charges and such. So those all combined are 2.5 million.
I'm just wondering that when you issue the report, item 2, and you show a number here, where can I find that number in the exhibits? Can I find the 2.594?
In the exhibits, yes, you can. It would be physically adding. I think from next time onwards, we can add it for you and show it to you on the screen. But it's all the negatives that you see on column 1.
Which if you look at the checking, so the beginning balance plus the 4 million that came in would be about 5.4 million. But the ending balance is just over 2.8, and the differential is basically that 2.5 in the staff report. So it's the sum of all those parentheticals.
Well, that's another way to explain it. So let's just start from the top. 1.4 million was our starting balance in the checking account. We received 4 million. And then if you look at the ending balance, 2.8 million, that is going to be 1.4 million plus 4 million minus whatever went out, resulting in an ending balance of 2.8 million. So whatever went out is 2.5. And I can show it to you on an Excel file.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is it just to include that tally in this report. So we can find the numbers. I'm
Right.
I'm particularly interested in this because Kate's gonna be joining the board. Becca's gonna be joining the board. And why don't we present as clear a report as we can?
Right. Just for your benefit, I would like to share my entire screen.
Also, I'm chairing the admin committee next time, I believe, and
Right,
I'm looking out for myself too.
I am with you. So here, if you look at, this is an Excel file. And I have highlighted all the numbers here, and if you look at the bottom right, see that bottom right here? It's 2.5. Might be a little hard to see, but here it is.
Eyes at the back of my head.
Uh, See that where my cursor is? Yeah. So that is a summation of all the items that are highlighted here. That's 2594 right here. I'm going to do this for you. And sum this all up, and there you see it. And moving forward, we could provide this in the body of the PDF, so it's easily seen.
More than the PDF and the written report
And yes,
and the agenda report.
right. So anyone who looks at the exhibit can tie it to the number on the Word file, on the written report. Yes.
Okay, I'm just thinking when I do my deep dive and it's not popping up for me. It's not gonna pop up for any newcomer either.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. We can in fact amend it for the board meeting too. So this number is jumps out easily.
Okay. Now, this was already approved, was it, or was it motion? Was there an action on this?
We took action, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got my questions and requests out. Okay. Can we vote on this? Look for a motion? Oh, more discussion, go ahead.
No, so we're gonna, I move we recommend. Or adopt. November, and explain to us.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So now we're on item number 3. Which is,
Yes, I'll
okay, go ahead, please.
I'll go item number 3, which is deletion or disposal of district assets from its financial asset schedule. And the idea here is more accurate representation of district assets in the district's annual statements. And so currently the district maintains an asset schedule, which is a listing of all assets, the description, original cost, depreciated amounts, and that register is part of it's a module in the financial system that accounts for all this. And we take data from that and use it while developing the annual statements. And so this time around, this is part of a big cleanup. So you may recall that staff has periodically come to the committee with an item about disposal of assets, which is like computer equipment and such. Here we have looked at the entire garage, like cleaning the garage. So we've looked at every asset. We had 600 of those. And if you look at the exhibit that's attached, you will see the acquisition date. These assets go back to 1983. And so we wanted to look at assets that are fully depreciated and just delete it if there's no record of it being used. And that's what we did. So it was a two-step exercise. First, we went to the divisions and said, this is the listing of all our assets. Please tell us if you use it or not. And we received some response, but obviously we don't have like institutional knowledge going way back to that date. So we had to come up with a set of criteria, which is listed in the staff report. And so there are 4 criteria that we came up with. The first of which is a simple, a simple definition of what's an asset and what's an expense. Anything less than $5,000 is being considered as an expense going forward. So those things won't be capitalized and we put as assets. So that was the first criteria. Second, we looked at software licenses or like construction plans and drawings that were capitalized. So those were taken out. Now all these are fully depreciated assets, but the way we account for them is if those aren't physically deleted, they still show up as assets being used by the district. So number 3, depreciated assets like installing a carpet. If it doesn't increase the useful life of the building, shouldn't be considered as an asset. We will just expense it. And then finally, if we have no record of that asset being used and the divisions didn't say that the asset is being used, and if an asset was older than 15 years, then we took it off. And usually equipment has a asset life of 7 years. So we are still a little conservative in looking at all assets for the last 15 years. So those were the 4 criteria. And as a result of that, we took out about 80% of the assets from our asset register. So the big learning here is you can see the 80-20 rule in how it comes into play, because even if we deleted 80% of the assets, that didn't make a big dent into the total cost of assets that the district has. We have about 19 million in assets, and after going through this exercise, we only deleted 1.46 million. So items that should have been expensed perhaps were treated as assets, and those are all cleared right now. And then second, the second implication of this exercise is also that it shows that the district has the ability to account for assets, and if we were to ever become a full-fledged utility, then we have the systems and the processes in place to account for large assets. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I'm all for house cleaning and you're doing all the heavy lifting, so that's great. So if an asset, the original cost was more than 5,000 and then at some point it drops below, you still track it as a depreciating asset?
Yes, if the original cost is more than 5,000, then it is logged as an asset, and the total cost is depreciated over the life of the asset. So it could be a straight line depreciation or a double declining, depending on what the rules are for depreciating that asset.
And once it's fully depreciated, do we take them all off the list, or?
Then the question is, are we using the asset or not? Because sometimes we can have a car or a vehicle that's fully depreciated, but we continue to use it. So it remains on our books until it's disposed of. And that's what this exercise is. Fully depreciated assets that are not used.
That seems like the right thing to do. If we're using the asset, it's an asset, for instance.
It's a fully depreciated asset. The book value of the asset is 0, but it's still being used. So we have vehicles like that are fully depreciated, but they're still on the asset schedule.
And we obviously had somebody, over a decade ago say, software license. Well, that software is an asset, so we'll treat the license as an asset. And you know, as software is moved into almost software as a service, you know, it becomes updated so frequently that the asset, you know, the version that you may have bought really isn't an asset. It's a constantly renewing thing. So the character has kind of shifted to much more operations than capital. But we had several of them in there that were just, you know, so they don't even kind of fit the definition anymore. And so they're gone. But what's funny is when you look at this vast spreadsheet and you take out the ones that are going to be eliminated, that'll give us a fresh look at the remaining. And there will probably be a few more eliminations once we digest the smaller list.
Software licenses that we are using.
If the,
Service,
Mhm.
Yeah, we treat it more as an operating cost. Because almost all of them are annual at this point. You
Yeah.
just get updates as of day.
If it's an annual software-based subscription, we would treat it as an annual cost. If it's installed on our computers like Acela, which is used for permitting, that is something that we own, and let's say we put in $1 million to create that asset, then it would be amortized. And there are rules, like IRS rules for these amortizations. But yes, most of our software licenses are annual subscriptions, so we don't capitalize those. And there, you'll see that there's like ArcGIS licenses from 2016, which obviously we don't use because there are new iterations of these licenses. So the old licenses need not be an asset, so that has gone too. And to Dave's point, this is like our first pass, and when we plan to do this exercise more frequently. So now from 600, we are down to 150, and so it would be easier to go through that list and go through this exercise again.
Well, shouldn't you, every year when you dispose of stuff, give us that list of disposal, take that stuff off this list right then? That's the second program in the district that I'm finding out that people forget about. And then somebody along new comes along and then we clean the house. You know, it shouldn't happen like that. Every year when you dispose of something, stuff should come off the list. And
You're right.
I don't know that 1.4. Do that reduces our budget? Do it have any effect?
It won't have any budgetary effect. It's just cleaner representation of what we have on the books. The book value of these assets is already 0. And so unless someone is looking at it very closely, they might not even realize they will not be able to make this out. So
That's a good point, because when this comes up, even if it's on consent, somebody out there looking at this district and seeing how we run it. And, you know, we've been throwing out programs that, you know, water demand and this kind of stuff doesn't make us look too good.
And to your point, every year the district has disposed of assets, and those assets came off the register. This is just looking at it comprehensively, every asset, and this is obviously a big exercise.
Even if it's that, you know, that's my point. It shouldn't become a big exercise.
Right.
That looks like we clean the house, straighten up our books. So enough said on that.
All right. I hear you.
Two related questions. One is, how do we treat our investment in Monterey One Water? And then where are these assets? What facilities are we using to house whatever? Or use them, I'm just to house them. But use them.
Yeah, so our investment in Pure Water Monterey, we do not carry any of it as an asset. So it was just basically out-of-pocket capital expenditure at the time, but we have no ownership, so we're not depreciating it. Which, you know, has been a source of soreness from time to time.
It's not allowed, or is it not negotiated?
It's just not allowed under GASB. I mean, it's not an asset of the district. So we made a contribution in aid of construction basically. And then waved at the money as it left. So, and that's, it's kind of a position we put ourselves in. You know, we had, and you know, you may recall, like Jeannie Byrne and a few directors had often bemoaned the fact that, you know, we spent all this money and don't have ownership. But you know, the way we kind of reconciled it is our job was to go get water supply, not required to own the water supply. And so we went and got it.
And we own 1 or 2 wells, right?
We don't own any of the pure water Monterey wells.
Thought we did.
No,
No.
we were project manager for the first 4 wells.
We got grants for them.
Yeah, we got grants for the
Grants
new
and stuff,
ones.
but once they built, they turned over to them, and you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's a little bit like the reclamation project since 1992. We paid, well, we didn't pay, we financed, so we were the bank. Paid for the asset and we owned the water. But the water is kind of a, you know, it's not a hard physical asset that you can bring people to go look at. And we're kind of in the same boat with pure water. We own a big operating reserve, which we also can't show you, but you can stand over it and know that it's under your feet. But yeah.
Yeah, to that point, this is the all the categories of assets in the staff report, and there's an asset called reserve water. And you'll see that the assets deleted, there are none, because water can't be depreciated because it's like land. You know, like something that's built is depreciated, but water and land can't, so it stays at its original cost. Although there's a nuance there, which I won't get into, the mark to market nuance, yeah.
It does, it actually does, and that's what he's referring to. If we quote unquote marked it to market.
Yeah.
You know, not unlike a stock certificate that you're held, and it's appreciated. So to get a measure of your true wealth, you mark it to market and say this is what it's worth. Well, when we take water out of the operating reserve, we would charge CalAm the then current water rate, which is always going up. So it would be appreciating if we mark it to market. Because we have to refill it, we'd also be refilling it at a higher cost in the future, but that would get reflected. The market to market. Yeah, I probably do.
Yeah, we could do that, but to your point, if you're going to buy it at the same cost and inject it in, then the net effect is going to be 0. So
Unless we only use up a small portion, we mark the whole thing to market, but
yeah,
I'm not sure the district gains anything in having an appreciating asset that, you know, upon further review, knowing now what we know, I think we would have held firmer for a smaller reserve requirement. Because the concept was you need enough wet water or water in the ground so that you could sustain a 6-month outage at the plant and not fail to deliver the company requirement. I don't think we'll ever see an outage more than a month unless it's an act of God, you know, an earthquake or some other disaster, which is covered elsewhere in the contract, you know, force majeure. So we probably overcompensated. And then because we negotiated off the same contract for the expansion, we have kind of the same requirement. And CalAm actually wanted to see us increase the operating reserve requirement with the expansion. You know, to which we said, makes no sense. But we should have gone the other way, I think. It's just, we'll never have a 6-month outage. So.
Part 2 of that question is, where are the facilities that house the other assets?
Yeah, well, so it's a mixed bag. You know, Sleepy Hollow is an actual facility that you can go look and see. Trucks just sit on the parking lot. So it's a variety. The building has a lot of the smaller assets.
So
You
we
know,
basically got two locations, I mean, here.
and ASR, you know, we've got
ASR,
Okay.
two buildings. I think the second building was probably $6.5 million all in, and so, you know, we've got almost 10 million of assets over at ASR, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I like your staff note you put on the bottom of this. Every 3 to 5 years. I would like for you to narrow that down to either 5 years or 3 years. Something to hold you to,
Mhm.
because you can go 3 to 5, well, I don't feel like doing it this year. And it goes into the 4th year, well, hey, 3 to 5 years, I prefer you nail it down to either 5 or 3 years. So,
We can do 3 years.
well,
Yeah.
if you put it in there,
Yeah.
I'll be looking for it, because I'm giving you 3 to 5, you probably wander off or you go someplace else. And the next person comes in that seat would probably be thinking the same thing, well, 3 to 5 years, well, I'm not gonna do it this year. So. what
Yeah,
number
and
is
I
that?
think you characterized it correctly too, that this is one of those, a new set of eyes. Both, I don't know if you'd say the auditor also, but you know, this is Michelle's first audit. And he looked at it and, you know, clearly Suresh didn't in his mind rise to the level of having to address it. But once we looked at it, it's like, why didn't we address
Well,
it?
he's gone now, it's
Yeah.
on you now, so.
Well,
Oh.
I am very encouraged by the things you're finding and fixing.
I agree,
Thank you.
but nail it down, don't go 3 to 5,
Yes.
pick a year. Either 5 or 3.
We can amend that sentence to 3 years. And then we'll, someone has to track it, including me.
And
When you do
Right. It's more manageable, right?
Yeah, because people look at 1.4, you know, I look at it and say, man. Why are we holding on to that, and why we haven't told the public about it? And that's just my thinking.
Mhm.
And I hear 15 years, I really get wound up.
And in my predecessor's defense, the book, there's no effect to the book value of the assets. So someone could think along those lines and say, hey, this is not a priority because it's not affecting the book value of the assets. This is someone who is actually willing to look at like note 5 and see, well, these are the assets you have, these are the assets duplicated, so which means you're still using it even though you fully debit. So it's an implication. And so it was a nice to have thing, and maybe it didn't rise to the level of a must have, and so maybe it didn't get done, but I'm glad that we're doing it
I'm
now.
glad you're doing it, so, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said. I want to put good money on who wanders off first.
Well, my time is getting short, so. I hope he get it in there, if I see it in there, I know it's done.
There's gonna be a whole series of these things over the next couple of years that just.
Yeah, well,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
good.
Good that you
Hi, Chip.
went deep on this, and I like that you're cleaning up. And I was amazed at the long list, that's what got my attention. So anyway, why don't we just leave it to staff to the next time you bring, an excess. Equipment, whatever it is. Next time you bring us also a plan to say, a commitment that you're gonna do 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's what he said, he's gonna put 3 years in there.
I think he just changes the staff note to 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
For the board meeting,
He
we
said it,
change
and I
it
said
to
that's
3
good,
years.
Cause I'll be looking for it and keep me from pulling it.
Okay, are we,
We need a motion.
do we need a motion? Yeah, that's fine.
It is agendized for a motion to recommend. To the board.
Um,
Before we go down that path, though, I just want to make sure there is no public online. I see that there's 5 attendees now.
Okay, so, Sarah, can you see if
Staff
anyone
person.
from the audience wants to have a comment on this?
Chair Riley, it's a staff person that's online.
All staff people?
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
yes, she's just
Okay.
observing the meeting.
So, is there a motion to approve this report?
I move that we recommend to the board approval of this item.
Okay, for the vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote carries unanimously. Okay, so now, on what page is item 4 on?
33.
Item 4, okay, consider approval for the annual update of the investment policy.
Item four, I'm gonna provide a brief summary. So this is, an update to the investment policy. It comes to the committee and the board every January. The investment policy governs the investment of district funds. And this report is provided pursuant to the California Government Code, section which is listed in the staff report, I think 5364-6. There are no updates to the investment policy. The last update was done in August of this year, or last year, where we added the California class and camp programs to the investment portfolio. And then we looked at all the government codes that are listed in attachment I, so there are no further updates. I'll just call attention to the fact that the policy says that the district treasurer is a trustee and fiduciary and will act with cure, skill, prudence, and diligence under the circumstances prevailing. And as a trustee, the treasurer is authorized to acquire investments as listed in this policy. And so there are also two overriding objectives that are listed in the policy. One is safety of principal, and then the second is maintenance of sufficient liquidity to meet cash flow requirements. And then the attachment I, which is on the screen, provides the list of allowable investments, including the maximum term and the maximum specified percentage in the portfolio. And the multi-party already knows that the district has three main types of investments. The majority of it is state life program. Second, now we have investments in California class, and then the third category is bank CDs and government bonds. And those are all within the guidelines stipulated in this policy. And that's my brief report.
Go to the list and tell me where the bank CDs and which item is that?
Yeah, bank CDs are like,
Collateralized bank deposits.
or the negotiable certificates of deposit.
Yeah, so FDIC insures bank deposits up to 250,000. All the bank CDs that we have are up to that amount. And in the quarterly investment report that you'll be seeing in the next committee meeting, you'll have a listing of those interest-bearing bank CDs.
Allowable, a list of allowable investment instruments for the state government code. It's on page 42 of our packet. There are just 4, I noticed, that are not allowed. Oh, that we didn't allow. Okay, that are allowed, but that we did not allow.
Yeah, can you page down on this?
Yeah,
As much as I'd like to see us execute some reverse
purchase agreements. Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's why we said no, because no single board member at the time when we modified this knew what they were. And even with my investment banking background, trying to explain what they are. It was like, why give us the authority to trade in them if no one really understands them. So that's where that came from.
If I can't understand the explanation of what it is, I am.
Not touching it.
Well, and see, the important thing is it's not just repurchase agreements, it's reverse repurchase agreements. And at one point I understood repurchase agreements. But I can tell you at this point, maybe Nikhil understands reverse repurchase agreements, but I could not tell you how the transaction works.
Well, it's,
I want to.
no,
It's
these
a
are-
financial instrument. It's
exactly. So it's one party selling a security to the other party in exchange for cash. For the agreement to buy back the security at a later date. It's a short-term funding instrument. That's called a repo. There's a repo market, and the reverse is like when the parties are exchanged, it's a reverse repo. But I will agree with the general manager. It's can be a little hard to explain, and it's not something that gives us additional benefit in terms of reward or risk. I think in a time of high interest rates as we have now, we have a well diversified portfolio in the LAIF and class, and we're earning above 4% right now. So we don't need to be hunting for extra yield anywhere. I think if the risk can't be understood by the board, then it's prudent to not invest in those instruments, even though they're allowed by the state. And it's not needed, in my opinion.
See, they were considered relatively secure. They actually are. Repos are pretty secure. It's more like security lending. Even though there's a sales agreement, and so they're known prices. And so the security is pretty solid. As you go to the other two, the collateralized bank deposits, which I don't really know what those are, but the next one,
Mortgage path.
yeah, so if you
Yeah.
remember the crash of
2008.
2008,
Yeah.
that was the collateralized debt, or CDO, collateralized debt obligations. CMOs were the first CDO that were created, collateralized mortgage obligations. And the whole concept, and this is why Standard & Poor's and Moody's took a hit in 2008, was that there's so many of them in the pool that they're kind of too big to fail, right? And there are tranches of quality, and so when you offset the lower quality with higher quality, supposedly the pool's really good, and the rating agencies always gave these AAA, and then when they got a little bit more subprime, they, still AA and so forth. Well, the AA subprime collateralized debt obligations failed wildly, and so even though they made it onto the allowable investment lists of many municipalities in California, the whole concept of credit risk has changed on those.
I remember this issue very clearly with the underlying, millions of underlying mortgages were, were
Didn't have value.
risky and shouldn't have been
Yeah.
done in the first place. It wasn't just a few, it was many.
But the reason they exist are the same reason you can see what are called fractionalized receivables and so forth. So like businesses can sell their receivables, and you put them in a pool together, and there's a certain risk, and somebody will put a number on what they're willing to pay for that. Let's say you've got $1 million in receivables, some of which may not pay. There's an uncollectible risk, but you pool them all together, and somebody's willing to say, hey, instead of waiting, I'll pay you today and I'll collect all your receivables later. The CDOs and CMOs and mortgage, they're basically going to the bank saying, well, you don't want to own that mortgage. You've already lent the money. We'll take your place to receive the payments, and we'll give you a big chunk of money that you can relend. And so the banks are like, sure. But then, and you had reinsurers like AIG that were, providing insurance on the AAA rated securities. And, at the end of the day, all you're doing, or all the creator of the collateralized mortgage obligation did was he stepped in and said, I'll take the repayment risk. And I'll give you a big chunk of money for it. And, you know, that's ultimately what failed.
And at discounts, right? Because they were buying money now for somebody else picking up the money later.
So all those houses out near Tracy that went underwater that, you know, fueling the collateralized debt obligations. So,
Yeah. The loose underwriting standards, and that led to the creation of the Dodd-Frank Act, if you may recall, in 2010. So the underwriting standards were really made more stringent, more rigorous, and the minimum requirement here is double rated, but to get that extra yield, we have other instruments to invest in.
I'll get myself on into the minutes this time. I'll move approval. I don't feel for the recommend to the board.
Yeah, I'll second that. On a second, I like your staff note. You told us you already updated this thing back in August, and that's good to keep you from pulling it. So, good.
yeah. Now, we may ask for changes as soon as next year. Once we focus in, you may have heard me say we need to maybe develop a reserves policy, a target, so we can justify how much money we keep on account. And I actually think the 30% limitation on negotiable CDs might actually at some point become too restrictive. So we'll bring that back to you at some point.
Can that relate to some national policy?
No, I mean, it's in our policy, but for example, there's no restriction on US treasuries, which are very secure as well, but well, who knows what's going to happen with the FDIC and Fannie Mae,
That's fine.
you know, all of the quasi-governmental things, but the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp should continue to exist, should continue to insure up to 500,000, 250,000 on negotiable CDs. And if that's the case, you know, if we establish a reserve requirement that stays kind of where we are today, there will be a time where you don't need liquidity for probably 50% of your reserves. And so right now, we do have a few US treasuries, I think, not much. From time to time, I think multi-bank slips one in there as an alternative.
Most of our US treasuries are part of the LAIF portfolio
Yeah.
and the class portfolio.
Okay, so let's have a vote. Any more discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item, item 5, information only. So we're not action items coming up here. I have a fundamental question about this report. I can understand when I don't know and say that. Why are we continuing to do this? Is this too low a number? Do we have a 55 or something or that's good? I mean,
For
The contracts.
1,000 or yeah. So Measure J, we'll just take that one off the table. It should continue to exist until we're no longer pursuing it, just out of public disclosure. But yeah, contracts.
I think the 25,000 dollar threshold aligns with our purchasing policy, where contracts above 25,000 need to come to the board. And if the board believes that, you know, you only want to see contracts above 50,000, it may affect a small number of items on these reports, but I think a lot of our contracts are above 50.
Because of that issue, I mean, that
Yeah.
they have to go to the board. It exceeds my authority. And my authority ends at 25.
Right.
I would leave it.
Yeah.
I will, the biggest thing about all our reports, even if we're talking about taking Mid J off of this thing, is keeping the public informed. It's not like we hiding things. Everything is in the open, even Measure J, we ain't not doing nothing on it, or it's in the public eye, so they can't say, well, when did this pop up? Because, you know, as we get older, we start forgetting what we undone. You know, so that's my big thing. I don't wanna take that out, and I like that 25,000 number because it's a low number. And if we build it, you know, it just, to me, it keeps me informed of what's going on. So, you know, I used to talk about how thick our packets are. But now I'm realizing I'm glad they thick.
Well, and I don't know, it may have been your suggestion initially anyway, but the subject came up, which is, you know, why not just list the contracts that we have that are out there. And I thought it was really good because it's just a quick snapshot of what is the district up to?
That's right.
What are you doing? And so if somebody has a question about one of them, they can say, oh, what is this?
It just keep the public informed, it keeps me informed, you know, it's like taping this meeting. I can go back and look at it. You know, it's out there, so I prefer keeping everything if.
Yeah, we did not do this 10 years ago. It was somewhere probably 6, 7 years ago, somebody thought that would be useful. And I'd say it is.
I think that old name Gary Hoffman brought this up. He did, he wanted to know contracts over 25,000. And one of the lists, one of the good things he did.
I see a couple of the contracts. One for Colin Tuno and Ed Allen and Lieutenant that we spent more than what had been budgeted, but I think we subsequently approved a bigger budget, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm not sure that on Colantana, it's kind of like Laredo in general, delay in Laredo.
Yeah.
Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and we're gonna end up paying for the legal
Yes, Tom.
expenses. Route 10, we tend to open a requisition for a certain amount that's been approved by the board. Same thing with Shoot Mahali. So those special counsel services, yes. I think the Colantano has become so ingrained in us as kind of an outside counsel that we don't have a single requisition of authorized funds for every one of those activities that Colantano does. I think we authorized a budget for the MPTA, but occasionally we'll just say, hey, we need your opinion on this or this. And
No.
Yeah.
We've been monitoring, you know, their efforts and expenditures and, you know, making sure that they're not overdoing or overextending their.
Here's a question whether we could authorize a higher amount. That's
I think
important.
we do, right?
well, we did for Route 10 just a couple of meetings ago. Might have been the last one, yeah.
How far are we from spending more money on?
Well, so all we did, well, Colantano's still going because we're negotiating with the taxpayers. And then that will wrap up so there were 3 reverse validation proceedings and 1 class action request for refunds. If we wrap up the prior Superior Court and lost appeal on the water supply charge, inclusive of those 4 other unresolved things, then Colantano will be kind of done till the next problem.
We'll know more about this in our next meeting.
Hopefully by the closed session, we'll have a proposal for you. Either way, we'll have a proposal for you because we have to address legal fees on the appeal. But we're kind of, we've set parameters for a resolution of the overall settlement. But we haven't heard back from the parties.
Probably not as much as we should discuss it.
I was gonna say, stay tuned for closed session like that.
Yeah.
Okay, good, and then, the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, the agenda, and I apologize, Sarah, did your most recent revision with the move to the action item get in their packet? Okay, because I'm not working from that packet. So we do have a closed session. There are two items. One is hopefully closure on yours truly, annual performance review. And George and I talked, we're going to try to have a little better diligence to move it up a month next year so that we actually close it out by December instead of January. And then we have what I just mentioned with the taxpayers. So whatever information we have, we're going to bring to you. But I think we can get them both in the hour. Taxpayers are going to take no more than 10 minutes. On the,
Assuming we don't
yeah,
pursue it on the question.
And that's a good point with this kind of stuff on closed session. His evaluation ought to be by itself. You know, I hate to go in there for a quick 30 minutes. Dave, you're doing a great job. Anything else that is rushing it. We're about to talk about his salary. And in 30 minutes, I don't think it could be done. You know, minds aren't made up, but you know, we have to be able, 7 of us have to be able to talk that over. What's it gonna be? You know, is that fair? If that, you know, whatever, not going in it. And we got a habit of piling everything in within an hour, but we can stay after. Once we can stay after, but once that meeting is ended, I'm ready to hit that door. I'm not ready to go back into closed session on something that, you know, it just that we just gotta learn how to set aside. Dave, your evaluation will be this day. We'll come in at 12 o'clock, leave at 2 or something like that. You know, I'm not trying to set up more meetings, but some things need more meetings, especially our closed sessions. You know, so.
I would assume that, well, let me say it differently. I would hope that we can complete the GM evaluation at the 5 o'clock session. And take as much time as we need to do that. And if we need to go over, we'll take the legal stuff afterwards and then hopefully try to schedule it a little differently.
Yes, because
and the good news on this meeting is it's a pretty short agenda. Now I filled it with some things, knowing that it was a short agenda, but even the things I filled it with, we can plow through if we know that we're gonna.
Well, I don't mind in the future, if you think we can get this stuff done, don't even add to the agenda. Just, hey, quick meetings, we're done, we're done. People, they're looking at.
We'll talk about the things I added. I think you'll find me.
Yeah, they probably good, but I got a habit of talking a lot, so you know, hey, I'm put that out there. And I don't like to hang around after.
Well, through the chair, you could start your closed session earlier.
True.
You know, you're not chained to start your closed session at 5 p.m. If it is something that you think does require a lot of attention, instead of adding another meeting, you could push your meeting start time earlier.
Yeah, I don't mind if we start at 4:30 or whatever, closed session, but you know, we just have too much to talk about sometime and
And it's the GM evaluation, you know, I don't know that people are gonna show up for
Yeah,
public comment and all that stuff.
I can do that if that's what.
well, you gotta check with the other board members too, because they get in within that hour, but I just say it's just a lot of stuff and we keeping a lot of stuff on closed session, and I hate to just run through it because I have learned that hour is not enough.
Well, I've always found the legal discussions far more informative. But that takes some.
That's right.
Well, why don't we just stick with the 5 o'clock, the way it is right now, and we'll play it by ear that night.
I'm just hoping as the chair, you look at it in the future. Dave, I hope y'all look at it in the future.
Yeah.
You know, we like to get our people in here for that meeting, a full day of meeting. You know, I look at Mayor Oglesby in the city of Seaside. 4-hour meetings. That's the minimum that he has over there. And then they take a break. They start the meeting out at just about in the middle of it, they take a break. Yeah, that council meeting, but I just, and then, no,
Well, you were on this board back in the early 2000s,
right?
and some of the folks who were around then said you had some meetings that went on for 4 hours,
Hey, wait,
11 o'clock,
11 o'clock,
midnight.
10 o'clock,
Yeah.
that's when we had to finally put a time on it, it'd be 9 o'clock, yes. Yes, so we got a lot better.
Good. Good thing.
Yeah, because we put a 9 o'clock stop time on it.
Would give up on participating.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't even want to look at, sometimes don't even want to look at the Seaside council meeting. No,
Okay, so the other issues on the agenda, you have your consent items from this meeting today. The GM report, in addition to the standard compliance reporting, we've added motel and water demand forecast, just some interesting information. You know, this is kind of response to Tom Rowley. You know, and you know what the answer is going to be. Of course, we've included hotels, and even if hotels haven't fully come back, which it's debatable whether they have or they haven't, but you'll see the numbers. The fact of the matter is that the impact that hotels could have on overall demand is less than the noise in the system. It's like less than 1% of future demand growth.
Hotels in the
Big project.
Yeah. Yeah, the important takeaway is going to be that AMBAG did 19 meetings with the jurisdictions, and so the 4 new hotels were discussed, one of which is the Seaside Resort, which is outside our service territory. So the 3 remaining ones were discussed. I mean, you had 19 meetings, so A, they're in there, but B, this idea of, oh, you know, we're still struggling, we're not back pre-COVID. We're about 6% below pre-COVID here in Monterey. And if you look at in California, we're almost completely back. But I've learned new terms, PAR, which means per available room. So there's revenue per available room, and then there's RevPAR, which is revenue per available room. And it's up like 21%. And so our occupancy rate is down depending on which city you're in. City of Monterey, it's like 6% below pre-COVID, but the room rates are 21% above. So it's not exactly like they're hurting. But that doesn't control water demand. The water demand issue is, okay, the curve is back, we're coming back. It looks like in 2025, we're supposed to be pretty much back right where we were before. So Tom, sit down. I won't say that, but you look at these graphs.
he just said it, so
Yeah. So there's that one. And then the update on Pure Water Monterey is just a reminder that we seem to be on time. We don't have any major issues. So all of this talk that we're out there in the community saying that, you know, here's allocations, we have an ordinance, you know, for second reading, we're on time. So that's a very short story. And then the update on the district's water supply charge. This is kind of in conjunction with closed session stuff, which is I'm not sure our public really knows that we are undergoing that we've sunset it and that we're going to issue a refund process. And so it's just basically saying we no longer have the water supply charge. There will be a refund process. And oh, by the way, here's the data. And we're still our water supply charge under collected, never met the full cost of our projects. It never met the full cost of our people, never met the full cost of our other operations, services, supplies, and consultants. And we've run a deficit. And so the water supply charge itself never fully funded all the water supply projects that it was intended to, and they came and took it away from us. So don't think, and you know, I don't think people will be able to distinguish, but this idea that we double dipped, you know, we didn't even single dip to the full extent of the need. You know, it wasn't enough money. We borrowed from other revenue sources, taxes, user fees, and so forth. So yeah, we lost it. It's gone. A refund's coming. Stay tuned. But it was never enough in the first place. Yeah.
About the big hotels, I know about the American Cannery, what are the other two? Were they not?
Kimpton, which is in Pacific Grove, so back behind the Holman building. There's an old, what's that?
Public library right across.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then the Marriott, which is in Sand City, which is going up right now. Those are the three big ones that are in our service territory. And then the fourth one is the Hyatt Golf Resort at Bayonet Black Horse.
But that's Marina Coastal.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that, gee, we didn't think of those. Yeah.
Plus the new facilities, I assume, will have most efficient technology available.
Yeah, but it's interesting because for us, when we're looking at non-residential demand, it's kind of related to jobs. And so you look at, well, where are jobs coming from? And you know, even in the city of Carmel, there's an assigned increase in non-residential water use based on the job growth in the city of Carmel that AMBAG came up with. You know, but we're left scratching our head. If you don't build a new hotel, or if you don't expand the footprint of existing restaurants, where are those jobs coming from? So there are still these kind of counterintuitive issues with the demand forecast. But kind of the nevertheless, even though there are those questions, there are hotels going in, so jobs will be created, but there's no, you know, like high-tech company that's moving headquarters here. There's no large-scale job growth. So you look at each of these individual jurisdictions, you know, we look at the unincorporated county and it's got job growth. And we're like, where's that coming from? You know, you're going to have to build something either in mouth of the valley or new business in Mid-Valley Center or something. But, you know, when you put up more self-storage units, there's not exactly a whole lot of jobs. So this idea that there's going to be increased use, the easiest place for us to kind of feel like, okay, that makes sense, is you put in new hotel rooms, you're going to get new service staff, you're going to get more seats at a restaurant. And so these hotel projects, yeah, they're probably job growth drivers, which may then spin off to like Monarch Pub gets one more waiter because there's more people living in town or visiting town, you know, so. But other than that, you know, until somebody says some company's moving 50 jobs here, I don't know what it is. I mean, you get more examples of McGraw Hill leaving than you have of a McGraw Hill arriving.
Piecemeal increments.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. You know, I keep saying, well, Cisco one day will locate a fabrication facility or something, you know. But if they did, it'll be over in Salinas, where,
And Amazon.
yeah, like the fulfillment center, sure. Yeah. So then, we have the second reading of the ordinance. It's actually 197 instead of 196, which we learned. And,
197 down.
yeah,
Mhm.
and then one action item following the public hearing, which will be the committee assignments. And the reason we took that off consent was so you all could talk about it if you wanted to.
Well, yeah, I'm glad it's off consent, you know, and it's public, I'm satisfied with it, but, it's, you know, putting stuff like that on consent, people, you know, need to know, so that's good. It'll be that would be quick, this is a quick agenda, so, should be, yeah. So,
You spelled out the report. I'm glad you.
I think everybody should become knowledgeable of what's going on in the hospitality industry since it's such a big driver here anyway, so
Yeah.
you learn something new.
Patients that we don't know what we're doing, that we're not even paying attention. The board members aren't even paying attention to what's being spent and so on. So I think, you know.
So when we adjourn, I'll give you another funny little story that's kind of along the Tom Rowley, it's premature issue.
Well,
The
any other,
premature, it's not right.
Yeah.
any other comments on anything, even the bottom of the page, or even more reports for the building? No more comments, no more anything? Yes.
If the chair is okay, there might be a slight redesign of the treasurer's report for the board meeting. So that the cap disbursements have a separate subtotal and all the receipts have a separate subtotal, so. Still thinking through it, but you might see a minor
If you
revision.
can do that, that'd be great. Okay, good news. All right, you adjourn.
You.
So
let Sarah cut
Yeah.
that tape, tell me that tape is off, cause I don't wanna look at it and find out we talking.